One of the highlights of this year's Italian Film Festival at Palace Cinemas across Australia is a documentary called Signorinella-Little Miss. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to one of the three directors of the film, Shannon Swan. Shannon, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Good to talk to you. And I really enjoyed a previous film that you were involved with, Ligon Street, Si Parla Italiano.
Mm.
Such a great observation of Italian life in Carlton, in Ligon Street, etc. What was the inspiration behind making this documentary?
Well, great question. I think when we made Lygon Street, we basically told the story of Italian migration through the eyes of a street. So we used the street as a vehicle to tell that story. But when you do that, you're kind of limited in scope because it is based around a street and what happens from one end to the next. And we're also limited by the fact that the men were the ones that really arrived first, without the women, and they came and set up their lives, and then the women followed, whether they were already married or they came by proxy or, um, by themselves. So what we wanted to do was tell a story that was a lot larger, that had a lot larger scope, that was Australia-wide. And because the first one was so male dominated, we also wanted to have a look at that journey through the female perspective because it is so different. So that was kind of the starting place for the film.
Ah, how interesting to hear that. Well, it's such a wonderful observation of the women who came to Australia, came to Carlton and all sorts of other places, and had an influence. How how did you find the various people, including, of course, Tina Arena and Carla Zampatti and so on, um, uh, footage from her, etc. How did you find all these people?
Well, Peter, as you would know, Italians are very connected. They've got quite the network of people. Um, well, basically, it all started from Angelo, my filmmaking partner, Angelo Pricolo and Jason McFadyen, who are directors and producers on the film. Angelo is very Italian. So I'm not sure he even knew Australians existed until he was about 15. Um, the first film kind of started because I observed his dad making wine and then talking to a group of friends. So they were all waving their arms, carrying on, and I just thought it was pure theatre. Italians are very entertaining, even if you can't understand what they're saying. So this one, Angelo's mum is actually in the film. So she's the woman who basically had a job and she wanted to get out of it. So she sewed the pockets 17, pockets in the wrong place to get out of a contract that she didn't want to be part of. So some of the people we found in the in Angelo's lounge room and part of his network. And then there were some of the bigger players who are quite well known, your Franca Arena, Tina Arena, Allegra Spender, and others who were kind of well known. So it was kind of, we wanted a mixture of unsung heroes, everyday people that had worked in the back rooms and it had found success that way. And then the people who were kind of successful as a result of what people had already done and what had happened before them. So, some were well known and some weren't. So we're just glad that we're able to shine a light on all sorts of different people.
Well, congratulations on that. They're such interesting stories and they speak so
Mm,
well. So,
mm,
how did you structure the documentary? Because it goes through a number of different stories of situations, etc. And there's lots of revelations that are made
mm,
about the way the women were treated. So, how did you
mm.
structure all that?
Well, there's obviously a timeline that you can follow sequentially. The first film we started kind of post World War II. This one we started in the 1930s. So we had some beautiful women, Mary and Celestina, who were both in their 90s. Mary's actually turned 100 in August, which was incredible, and she's absolute fire in the film. So it was kind of sequential up to a point. And then once we get into the 60s and 70s, I really wanted to sit in the story of the women. So obviously we tell different scenes from different perspectives. Like the rag trade, or if you're talking about food or restaurants, or you're talking about politics, I did want to attack those from different angles, but I also wanted the audience to sit in someone's life and someone's story. So it's not as choppy as some regular documentaries might be. You actually get to sit in these women's stories for a little while, get to know them, get to know their experience, and then, how they evolved from their position of where they grew up or what their situation was. But to tell you the truth, the women could all have their own documentaries themselves. So, Tina Arena kind of bookends the whole film, and she's at the end, but we only tell the story of when she leaves Young Talent Time because she was really the first Italian woman Southern woman on TV that people could recognize. But we don't even talk about the rest of her career. So, all the women that featured really could have their own films, because they're just such incredible women.
Certainly are, and again, so well documented. And it was great to hear Greta Scacchi narrate the documentary. She's been given a really great script as well.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing about it is that so Anthony LaPaglia was narrated the first one,
Yeah.
and so Greta and Anthony have actually worked a fair bit together over the years. So it was nice for them to kind of be a brother sister on this one because we kind of look at the films as brother sister films to each other. But like always, we had her in mind from the start. Like she's had the experience of being Italian Australian, and she grew up with that kind of experience and experienced the racism, and also that duality of not really being Italian but not really being Australian, which is, really important theme in the film. Um, and I remember you kind of pitched these ideas to her, and I sent her the film, her agent the film, and I said, "Oh, Anthony did the last one, so I think this would be kind of perfect for you." And she watched it, and she took it immediately over to her mother's house, and her mother's in her 90s, and they sat and watched it together and absolutely loved it, and that's why she decided to do the film. So, yeah, she's just got an amazing voice and tone, and she was so into it. And we did it via Zoom because she's in the UK. She works and lives in the UK. But she had all these ideas and she understood what the script needed at a certain point. So we're just thrilled to have her do it. And she really brought the script to life.
She certainly did. Yes. No, well done on that. I also must admire your choices of archival footage. There's some incredible footage there, some of
Mhm.
which I suspect hasn't been seen
Mm,
for a long time or at all. Tell me
mm.
about sourcing all that.
Well, I kind of describe it as Christmas time. You've kind of, you get given a package full of archive and, you open it up and you never quite know what you're going to get. I mean, you could get socks and jocks. And it's kind of like, okay, that's all right. Or you could just get something that you could never imagine. So, there's a bit of a routine. There's obviously the places that you go to get commercially available archives. So you go through your broadcasters, your SBSs, uh, Channel 7s, Channel 9s, ABC. And then you go to the National Film and Sound Archives, and then you uncover that. But the real gold is personal collections. And there's a bit of a ritual or routine when you interview someone. You sit down and have a coffee, obviously, and then you interview them, and that might take an hour and a half or 2 hours, depending on who it is. And then you have another coffee afterwards with, some cake or, some sort of sweet. And then they say, "Oh, I've got some photos. Would you like to see them?" Or "I've got some old Super 8 stuff. Would you like to have a look at that?" And then a box appears, and you start rifling through these photos, and you're like, "Well, there's a photo of someone on the cane fields from 1941." And then someone will bring out a collection of Super 8, which is them growing up in the suburbs in 1954. Like it's just an incredible experience to see that for the first time and then be able to incorporate that into the narrative of the film. So it just brings the experience of those people to life when they've got footage that can kind of um, help us experience what they're going through.
Absolutely brilliant. Yes, I really
Mm,
enjoyed all of that. It works so
mm,
well. I must ask you something. You mentioned the photos and so on. This is something I've seen in a few documentaries, and now it's in yours. This is a new process, I think, where you
Hmm.
actually make the people in the photo move and look as
Yep.
if they're interacting, which I
Hmm.
assume is either artificial intelligence or some other process. Tell me about how you did that, because it's absolutely stunning.
Yeah, so basically, photos have been manipulated for a long time,
Mm.
whether it's colorization of footage or photos or animation of photos. This is just another evolution of that. So we take a pre-existing asset, and it might be a photo of someone. Let's an example of two people getting married, and we're able to take that photo and using AI, we're able to bring that moment to life. Now, I didn't realize it was going to cause such debate or discussion around that. We get a lot of questions about it.
Ah,
But what it does, there's certain moments in the film that need to evoke a certain emotion. And just a flat photo didn't do that. And because there wasn't archive footage of that moment, it felt like we needed something else, another layer to bring across that emotion. So
mm,
that movement helps tell that emotion at that time. And I think the important thing to do when using AI, so these are assets that already exist, but using AI, it's important that you go and ask permission of the person that you get the photo of, and then you show them and get their blessing to be able to use it. So in all the cases where we used it, we asked for permission, do their due diligence, and they absolutely love it. Like, we brought a photo of a 100-year-old Mary to life, and she was just thrilled. Celestina, her father passed away 40 years ago. And when we made that photo move of her father at the docks waiting for her, she was crying. She was just so thrilled to see her father move again. So it's that experience for the person in the film that we were really interested in. So I think it really adds to the film. I think it's something that's going to be utilized more.
mm.
And I think it's ethically okay if you're not just making an asset out of nothing that doesn't exist. But these are assets that have belonged to someone and we've scanned them and then been able to bring them to life to help tell the story.
I think it's very effective. I think it's
Thank you.
great. I'm a bit surprised if people are critical of it because AI is the way to go in terms of
Yeah,
enhancing
yeah,
imagery and
absolutely.
so on.
I mean, we
Yeah,
also use it when we grade things, when we take particles out of, or like film effect out of film. So it's used quite a lot that the viewer doesn't actually understand.
yep.
So those tools are used quite a bit. So, but it's interesting. I think it's actually the younger generation that probably have a bit of a thing against it, and the older generation were just completely thrilled with it. So I think it's just one of those new things that there's a bit of pushback, but I think how we've used it and how it sits in the film works really well. So
Absolutely.
um,
Yep.
yeah, thanks, Pete.
Yep. No, absolutely agree. So tell me, how do the three of you work together in terms of fashioning the documentary? Because I'm always intrigued when you have co-directors, co-producers, co-writers, all that sort of thing.
Well, all three of us have thick skin, and we all like robust conversation. So I'm of the belief if you give a film to someone for critique or for an edit or feedback, and they say to you, "Oh, it's great," um, it's going to be awesome. That doesn't actually help me as a filmmaker at all because you can't. That doesn't help you in the process of making the film better. Or if you get provided feedback about a certain point, then you get to have the discussion about why you did that or why you believe it's correct or that's the way it should be. So the three of us have a very good feedback process. We have a very good shorthand with each other. We've made lots of content together. So we just have a really trusting relationship where none of us are hurt by any feedback. Obviously Angelo has the Italian lens, which is really important. So he has agency over the Italian story. But Jason and I have an outsider's view. And, I can give you an example for that. I remember, as I was saying earlier, that when we made Lygon Street, I was over Angelo's house and all the people from next door, the neighbors were all there and they're all waving their arms and yelling and laughing and all that kind of stuff. And I said to Angelo, this is a film. And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, this waving the arms, everything that's going on. That is a film. But because he saw it every day, and because he was in it, he didn't actually understand how special it was. So it actually takes an outsider's view to go, hey, this is something extraordinary, or this is something that's not normal or hasn't been seen before, something that you take for granted. So the three of us work really well together in that point of view.
Oh, excellent. Interesting to hear all that.
Hmm.
So, with all the footage you had, the interviews, incredible stuff, tell me about the editing process because I can
Mhm.
imagine that is quite challenging.
Totally. Basically my process. So I edit a lot of the docos I make. I don't know if you've seen the film Gurumul.
Oh,
I
yeah. Yeah.
edited that as well as produced that. And I like to cut, even if I don't end up doing the final cut, I like to cut as I go along as a producer to see what we have. So my process is, say we go and interview Catherine Harris from Harris Farms Markets. The interview goes for an hour and a half. And as we're kind of filming, I'm taking mental notes about what's good, how the story pieces together, what little bits of information. So that night, I will actually sit down and do an edit of content, which will bring it down to about 15, 20 minutes. Or maybe if I'm good, 10 to 15 minutes of just the highlights and the story. So you're kind of summing up someone's life or their experience in 10 to 15 minutes, which is quite hard. Um, and then I sit that in its own little timeline. So basically, it helps me remember what was great about the interview and what are the things that are important in terms of storytelling. And then, so once we've done all the interviews 4 months later, I haven't forgotten anything. So I then go and put all those segments onto a timeline. And when I've started, I've pretty much got a 3.5 hour film, or 3 to 3.5 hour film to start editing down instead of going, what was that thing that happened 3 months ago that I really liked? But I had to connect it to something else. So it kind of sits like that in the edit already. So then it's about condensing and moving those parts around. So I kind of edit as I go in their own little individual stories. And, sometimes it's amazing that some things that I edit at that first initial time stays like that and kind of doesn't get changed at all. And then there's other bits that are completely reshaped. So it can basically, happen all sorts of ways. But that's our editing process.
Okay. Okay. Oh, a really
Mm,
insightful process.
mm,
That's great to hear.
mm,
Now, the film, Signorinella, Little Miss is screening as part of the Italian Film Festival, which is great to see at
hmm.
Palace Cinemas for the next few weeks. And it screened at MIF. How else will the film be rolled out?
Yeah, so it's the best place to see it would be the Italian Film Festival at the minute through Palace, as you said. But then there's a national release as of the 30th of October. So that will be shown regionally all over Australia in all sorts of places. Um, and I think, I'm not sure if you're Melbourne-based, Peter, but the
I am.
Nova Cinema is quite a good place to go and see it.
It is.
Go and have a meal beforehand, go see the movie, and then get a coffee at Brunetti's afterwards, and chat about the film. I mean, that's one of the great things about the film is that it just incites so much conversations between generations. And I was in the premiere of Brisbane last week, um, and the conversations afterwards, because people take their mums, their grandmothers, and then they feel it's a great forum to then open up and have a conversation about their own experience. So it's a real sharing of experiences and stories. And, I had people come up to me and say, I've never been told that story by my grandma before. Or I didn't know that happened. I can't wait to talk to them about it. So it's a really good intergenerational experience for people to have.
Well, congratulations on that, because yes, it's a film that does elicit discussion
Mm,
and so on, and good to hear that it's getting a national release after the Italian Film Festival. That's all
mm.
good news. So, Shannon, I'm intrigued. Will there be a third film, a sequel again?
Well, to tell you the truth, you could easily do another one on the women of Italian migration. I mean, it's just such a rich vein of stories. I feel like we've done a really good job, but we've only scratched the surface.
Mm.
Um, but the interesting thing that we've come to realize is that there's a lost generation between the first arrivals and the next generation that, it's kind of like the lost generation of they didn't belong to Italy, but they didn't belong to Australia either.
Mm.
And that's, we always say about these films that they're migrant films and but they're told through an Italian lens. So anyone can watch our films and go, well, that's as a Greek person or a Vietnamese person, we had that similar migrant experience of, arriving, not being welcomed, and then working our way into it, and then, you know, becoming successful at the back end of that. So there's lots of shared experiences with other migrants. But the Lost Generation, you could do a film that is actually with other migrant groups because they all shared the same experience of, the Greeks had a lost generation. Lots of Eastern Europeans had the same experience. Lots of Jewish people. So you could actually tell the lost generation from varying different viewpoints. So that's something that we've discovered over the last few screenings about people who have had that experience, and that's definitely something that I think would make a great film and something that a lot of people would relate to.
Okay. No, that would be great. I think that's
Mm.
a really strong story. And so, Shannon, apart from that, and you've mentioned Gurumul that you've been involved with, um, tell me about a few other films you've been involved with and any other projects you're working on.
There's always projects in the pipeline, Peter, but I can't speak too much about them because they have to go through their funding.
Sure.
But I did made a couple of films since Gurumul. So my last one was called The Great Separation, and that was about how our world is seemingly more connected than ever, but actually more disconnected than we've ever been. And that's seen through a young man's eyes called Joey Fry, who uh, tried to commit suicide because he was feeling so lonely, but survived, but lost his leg in the process. And it's his journey of discovering why he was feeling so lonely, what has changed in society to make us feel lonely, and then what you can do about it to try and help loneliness at an individual level and a community level. So that was an incredible filmmaking experience. And then before that, I made a film called We Were Once Kids, which was about Larry Clark's 1995 infamous film
Ah,
called Kids.
yep.
And that won an actor for Best Editing in 2021 and also won at Tribeca Film Festival in 2021. So yeah, they're my kind of last two films I've done after Gurumul. So I'm always making something outside I run my own production company doing TV commercials and corporate comms and brand films and things like that. So creating every day and loving it and working with all sorts of different people. And that's the kind of thing I call myself Mr. Average. I'm kind of married, three kids, regular house in a regular suburb. So to be able to facilitate other people's stories and walk in someone else's shoes for a little while um, is a great joy. And I think that's my favorite part of filmmaking, really.
Excellent to hear all that. We've been speaking to Shannon Swan, who's the co-director of Signorinella, Little Miss, screening now at the Italian Film Festival at Palace Cinemas and releasing afterwards nationally. Shannon, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Peter. That was great fun. Cheers.
Okay, bye bye.